Hades and Mulan just dropped earlier this week, and these two cards have the potential to become the key components of game-winning strategies. Also, did you know these two cards have many secrets lying in plain sight that can give us insight into what Lorcana gameplay is like? Let's do a deep dive into these cards to find out how. Hey guys, this is D-Summon here from Mushu Report, where we aim to cover all things Lorcana. Earlier this week, there was a major news drop where we got a lot of information for the launch dates, the product info, art for upcoming arts, and lots more. It was all very exciting news, so if you haven't seen it yet, go check out that video. One of the most exciting bits of the news drop, however, is definitely the gift set, which brings us info for two new cards, Mulan and Hades. Both cards are pretty aggressive and have the potential to win the game, and I want to go through both, but Hades especially presents some interesting concepts to Lorcana as a game that I think could greatly affect how the game is played. So stay tuned for that at the later part of the video. Alright, first up, let's talk about my little baby girl Mulan, Imperial Soldier. She's a 5-cost Ruby character with 4-5 stats with the storyborn hero princess character types, which just that by itself is a rather interesting point to note, since if you're familiar with the story of Mulan, she's most definitely not a princess in the movie. That said, she is definitely recognized as a Disney princess, where you can even see her appear in the princess room in Ralph Breaks the Internet. This isn't a trend to go by though, since Elsa is also a Disney princess, but instead of princess, she has the queen character type, true to the story of Frozen. Stats-wise, Mulan's stats are pretty similar to Jumba Jukiba, who I covered last week. The only key difference is she has one lesser law point compared to Jumba, which in return she has lead by example, an ability to provide a pretty aggressive strategy.
What's our strategy, General?
Lead by example reads, during your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in the challenge, your other characters get +1 law point this turn. That means that even though Mulan has one lesser law point than Jumba, in the right deck she can bring a lot to the table. This part depends on the game rules, like for example, how many characters you can have on the board. However, if you have ever any doubt on what those pips are, I think it's pretty clear from Mulan's effect that those pips are related to winning the game, going by a pretty standard maximum of 5 characters, so if you play an aggressive weenie deck with many low cost characters to fill the board, Mulan can potentially give you an additional 4 law points to the other characters using her ability, making this a pretty potent strategy to destroy the opponent and win you the game.
My little baby off to destroy people.
Alright, so that's it for Mulan. Let's move on to Hades, also affectionately known by some of the Ravensburger staff as Fabio Hades. Hades, King of Olympus, is an 8-cost Ember character with 6-7 stats with the Floodborn, Villain, King, and Deity character types. Hades has the shift ability just like Stitch, which means you can possibly bring him up by turn 6 if you already have a Hades on the board from the previous turn. Just by stats alone, being able to drop a 6-7 character on turn 6 is seriously really good.
Yes, Hades rule!
Stats aside though, his Sinister Plot ability is what you really want, if you're more aligned to the evil side of things. For each other villain character you have in play, Hades himself gets 1 additional law point. That means similar to Mulan, you have for example another 4 additional villains on the board, Hades can get an additional 4 law points. Combined with 6-7 stats on turn 6, this is one character you do want to play against. So if your opponent plays a Hades character on their turn 5, I recommend you get rid of it quick, or you're going to face off something even stronger the next turn. Now, I believe I already shared the key points of why I think these two cards can be key components of a very aggressive deck build, but I think there's more than meets the eye here. For example, Sinister Plot is the very first ability that is directly affected by character types. Mulan's princess type here has made me think that there will be a princess character in the future which has an ability that is similar to Sinister Plot. Since the Evil Queen is pretty much confirmed to be in the first chapter, Snow White, the OG Disney princess, might also be in this set and has some kind of ability that relates to the number of princesses you have on the board. Hades also shares a few similarities with Stitch, the only 2 Floodborn characters we have so far. Both of these characters have the Shift ability, so could Shift be an ability exclusive to Floodborn characters? Also, Stitch wants to be a rock star, but he never became one. And as for Hades, it's even more obvious since he never won that fated battle against Zeus. This has made me wonder, what does Floodborn really mean? Through some discussions with some other Lorcana enthusiasts in Discord, I found out that in the print industry, flooding is a term used when you want to completely print a sheet so that it's fully covered with ink. This has made me think that Floodborn refers to that similar term, where both Stitch and Hades got completely covered with a layer of ink and were reborn into a totally different character which nobody has ever seen before. I guess we'll be able to confirm this theory once we see a few more Floodborn cards, but I really like where this could lead us. Basically, any Disney character under the sun could have their entire story change as they are reborn in Lorcana as a Floodborn, where the possibilities are endless. Last but not least, the most important point to note for Hades is probably the lack of the flourish around the hexagon. Originally, because of Dragonfire, it was thought that the plain hexagon may be something for action cards, while all character cards would have the surrounding designs. However, Hades is now the very first character that only uses the plain hexagon too for his presumably cost icon. Another important point to note is also how in the shift ability text you can see the resources required to pay for the ability is also the plain hexagon. Based on these points, my current guess is that when the card or ability indicates the plain hexagon, it means that the ink required to play the card or ability is generic. For example, you're playing an Amber and Ruby deck, you can use 5 Amber ink to play Dragonfire or 6 Ruby ink to play Hades shift ability. Whereas in the case of a card with a full cost icon, for example Mulan, where you're going to need at least one or possibly all the ink have to be Ruby ink. That's my guess that it's a bit more tame, but if I go into the crazy speculation and take into consideration Hades' sinister plot ability, another possibility is that the cards with the plain hexagon on the top left are cards that can play in any deck, regardless of the two main inks you're using for the deck. For example, if you're playing an Emerald and Steel deck, making use of cards like Cruella and Captain Hook to control the early game, since Hades has a plain hexagon for the cost, he is considered an ink or colorless card that can be played in this Emerald and Steel deck. So you can take full advantage of playing as many villains as you can for Hades' sinister plot ability. But that is pure speculation, and these are all the thoughts I've had ever since seeing the Hades and Mulan cards. Do you agree with my speculations? Let me know in the comments below. Or even better, join me in the Mushu Report Discord to discuss. Regardless of what you think of my speculations, I think that the gift set is a pretty awesome value proposition, which is something I'll discuss in another upcoming video. You want to find out which of the first chapter products is the best value to get? Subscribe and click the notification bell to get notified when that video comes out. And don't forget to like this video if you felt that my insights for Hades and Mulan were useful. Thank you everyone for watching. This is D Summon from Mushu Report, signing out.